Experts who have tested the Bushnell Holosight have given it rave reviews as one of the most effective and innovative gun sights ever made. The Bushnell Holosight is the first gun sight to use a revolutionary new concept in gun sighting systems: advanced laser holographic technology.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Robert Arms. My name's Rob and I'm the host of this channel. I put a post out on my YouTube channel asking you guys what your favorite retro optic was. I had a feeling I would knew what the winner would be, and it's exactly the optic that I'm going to be talking about today, the Bushnell Holosight. This thing looks so fucking cool on an FAL, dude. You have no idea. From the little amount of research I did on this optic, it appears that this was quite a groundbreaking piece of technology for a time before modern red dots kind of took over the entire market. So a little bit of lore about this thing. So there was a tiny little company in the mid 90s called Eotech that wanted to create an advancement in optic technology. They made a partnership with Bushnell, and sometime in the mid to late 90s at SHOT Show, they revealed this optic, the Bushnell Holosight. I mean, just by looking at its profile, you can kind of tell it looks very much like a Gen 1 Eotech, which it kind of is. It's funny, when I showed a photo of this to a buddy of mine at work, he was telling me this thing looks like something a 90s action movie villain would pull out hunting the hero, which makes a lot of sense because it really does look like it. Anyway, when this thing came out in the late 90s, most people that used it were typically competition shooters, which is initially what it was designed for. Very quick target acquisition on lighter weight weapons like pistols, and maybe some optic dependent weapons like rifles or shotguns for hunting. But there is plenty of evidence that shows that this thing was used by law enforcement and combat troops in the battlefield pre 9/11, like Army Delta Force and some foreign militaries. I did see one photograph of this optic on a HK-33. Could have been on a weapon a German soldier may have trained with. I don't know. All I know is that definitely for sure military was experimenting with this optic before they adopted the newer Eotechs. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the optic. So, unlike red dots, which typically emit a red laser through a piece of reflected coated glass, this uses a process called holography. Inside of the optic's window, a laser emits a hologram of the reticle. There is a picture diagram that could probably explain the process better than I can off the top of my head right now. Using this technology for an optic does have key advantages. For one, it's parallax free at pretty much all distances. And two, even with astigmatism, you're able to see the optic relatively well. It's pretty crisp. And three, even if the window is slightly obscured, you can still see the reticle's bright profile. So yeah, definitely for the 90s, this shit is pretty sci-fi, but what makes it even more sci-fi is that unlike modern EOTechs nowadays, you can change the reticle on this thing physically. Like there's physical lenses that you can change at the front of this sight that give you different reticle options, and it was mostly used for like competition. There's mostly dots that are out there. This one has the donut of death that's on a traditional EOTech, but there were plenty of them that had reticles that were in the shape of targets. Some had like trajectory lines and things of that nature, which made this optic very modular. And speaking of modularity, this one does come with a bolted 2x magnifier, which are relatively rare from my understanding, and fitted the FAL pretty nicely, I would say. Now, just because this optic does have some pretty amazing features doesn't particularly make it a very good optic compared to some modern options out there. For one, it takes an N-type alkaline battery that's like 1.5 volts, but those batteries die relatively quickly, and with heavy use in this optic, it's not very reliable, especially on a heavy battle rifle like this. And an optic like this typically can handle most weapons that are low recoil, like pistols, and at the very worst, ARs. On a 308 battle rifle, the laser emitter often gets vibrated very heavily from the recoil and often shuts off, which isn't really ideal for a combat weapon like this. As you can see here, after I fire off a round, the reticle just shuts off, and I'm having to turn it back on and see if I can keep it at the brightness setting that I desire, which is brightness setting 20. It continues to shut off every single time I bring it back to 20, and after checking the user manual, it says to check the battery indicator in case the reticle starts having weird flickering issues or maybe power issues, but I'm still using new installed batteries. At this point, I'm starting to conclude that it may be the shock of the recoil of the rifle itself and maybe not the optic. I also had some issues zeroing the optic because I think the previous owner probably messed with the elevation screw to the point where it doesn't click anymore, and I believe it may have been torqued further than it needed to, causing damage to the sight. But once I was able to dial it in to say around 200 yards, I was able to get some accurate shots off, but not consistent enough for me to say that I really wanted to use this optic on this rifle anymore. Like I said earlier, this is a very amazing optic for what it was at the time, but up to modern standards, there's a reason why the modern Eotechs are obviously much more battle proven and robust compared to this earlier design. Now, regardless of what I just said, if you can find one for a good deal, there's no reason not to buy one. They're still usable, especially on like lighter weapons, like I said, like ARs, if you want to do a retro AR build from like the early GWAT using these optics, they're still usable, right? I'd run this on like an MP5, right? But maybe not a shotgun, and especially not on this beautiful 308 Belgian battle rifle. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like, comment, and share if you thought this video was interesting and helped the channel grow. I appreciate any of your support. If you want to see any updates regarding the channel, check out my Instagram profile at Robert Arms Official. I hope you guys had a wonderful day, stay safe, and I hope to see y'all in the next video.